Hi, folks. This is Winston. Today I wanted to talk about 9/11 truth, okay? Um, about the conspiracy about it being an inside job, okay? Now, a lot of people, okay, have come to terms with this and now suspect that it is an inside job or believe so. And some polls show that 40% of the American people believe that the official story of 9/11 is not true. So they're very suspicious. And more people every year are believing that, are coming to accept that it was probably at least partially an inside job. Okay. But there are still people out there that flat out deny it no matter what, and think that anyone who thinks that it was an inside job is crazy. And obviously it's because of their knee-jerk emotional reaction, because they don't want to accept that forces within the US government and media could perpetrate 9/11 and carry it out. Okay, so there's this emotional reaction against that because it's too disturbing to believe. But the thing is, the evidence, a truth seeker follows the evidence and the data, and the evidence does point to a conspiracy and an inside job, at least partially. Okay, maybe there were Al Qaeda terrorists, but even if there were, it's at least partially an inside job. And let me explain why. Okay, now there are a lot of arguments and evidence that 9/11 was a conspiracy. Okay, it would take so many hours just to talk about them all, to summarize them all. So I'm just gonna summarize a couple of the most important ones. Okay, some of the key ones that cannot be refuted. And the first one is the collapse of the Twin Towers and Building 7. Okay, I don't know if everyone is aware of this by now, but I'm sure some are, but maybe not everybody, because the media doesn't talk about it very much. But on 9/11, 3 skyscrapers were destroyed, not 2, 3, okay, completely destroyed. So it's not just the 2 Twin Towers, but Building 7 was destroyed too. So you have 2 planes, okay, on 9/11 destroying 3 skyscrapers. How probable is that? Okay, and not only that, but these 3 skyscrapers, they all collapsed at free fall speed, or virtual free fall speed. The 2 Twin Towers, okay, they each collapsed at about 11 seconds, and Building 7 collapsed in about 5.5 seconds. And there's many videos of this. You can see them on YouTube or many websites, okay, that show the collapse of these 3 skyscrapers. And the problem is, if a skyscraper collapses at free fall speed, which means that there's 0 resistance, that's impossible, because buildings have a lot of resistance, okay, and that's what keeps them standing up. Okay, look at the buildings behind me, for instance. Do you see them collapsing? No, because they have resistance that holds it up, strong resistance. If you're sitting in a room right now, look at the roof above you, okay? The reason why the roof above you doesn't collapse on your head right now is because there's resistance in your building or your house that's holding it up. Okay, so buildings have to have strong resistance to keep them up, to prevent them from collapsing or falling, okay? And they need not just a little resistance, they need a lot of resistance. But if a building collapses at the rate of free fall, or even close to free fall, okay, that means that there was no resistance. That means there was almost 0 resistance. And that is not possible, okay, especially in those 3 skyscrapers, okay. If you look online, even on Wikipedia, the Twin Towers each had about 500,000 tons of resistance. So each of the towers, it weighed 500,000 tons each. Okay, that's a lot of resistance holding up the structure, okay, and that cannot collapse at free fall. The only way for that to happen is if you destroy the foundation of the building, the under infrastructure, as Peter Jennings said. I mean, did you know on the day of 9/11, a lot of several reporters, okay, including Peter Jennings of ABC, said that the buildings must have been destroyed by demolition, by bombs, because in order for a building to collapse that fast, you have to get at the under infrastructure of the building. That's what Peter Jennings said. It's on tape. You can see it anywhere on YouTube or on websites. And so Peter Jennings' exact words was, we all know that in order for a building to be demolished in this way, you have to get at the under infrastructure of the building. That's what Peter Jennings said. And also Dan Rather said that that bombs must have been in the building too, to destroy it like that. When Building 7 collapsed, Dan Rather said, that's the third time today where a building was destroyed by well-placed explosives. And so even the media, the mainstream media, said that there must have been explosives that destroyed the foundation, the infrastructure of the Twin Towers. So this is inescapable, okay? And some people did hear the explosions and the bombs, and there's testimonials of hundreds of people that heard explosions and bombs going off under the Twin Towers. And there's several clips of the bomb itself. I mean, you can hear a loud bang in some of the clips too, where before the Twin Towers went down. Okay, so you can't refute this. It's the law of physics. It's basic science. Okay, a skyscraper can't collapse that fast. You have to destroy the base, the foundation. You know, either at the floor level or the basement level. And there are janitors like William Rodriguez, who was on the first floor, okay, and he actually heard an explosion from the basement. So he heard a bomb go off in the basement, and it pushed him upward. Okay, so something went off underground, under the towers, okay? And you can even see the ground shake before the Twin Towers was destroyed, like about 15 or 20 seconds before. There's actually a video of this. It's by Etienne Sorrent. You can find it on YouTube, okay? And he put a camera on a tripod, okay? And the camera on the tripod was very steady, okay? So it didn't shake. But when he filmed the Twin Towers, if you see his footage, you'll notice that 15 or 20 seconds before the collapse of each tower, okay, you actually see the ground shaking. And that means that some type of explosion went off underground, okay, underground before the collapse, okay, so something was detonated underground. And this is shown on video, on Etienne Sorrent's tripod video. If you go to YouTube and type something like 9/11 collapse, ground shaking, tripod or something, you can find this video. It's by Etienne Sorrent. I don't remember how to spell his name, but I'm sure you can find it. So this is evidence. I mean, the ground was shaking 15 or 20 seconds before the collapse, and that is evidence that something went off. Okay, so I mean, this is a lot of evidence, and it's basic logic. You can't refute it, okay? And there's also seismographic information from seismologists that show that you know, there was some type of earthquake before the collapse too, you know, which is consistent with the film of the ground shaking and of the explosions people heard, and of the basement explosion that William Rodriguez felt too, and some others too, not just him. And then after the collapse, The infrared photos showed that there was molten metal still there for many days after the collapse. So the fact that there's molten metal shows a lot too. And another thing to keep in mind is that when the planes hit those towers, okay, and exploded inside, okay, I mean, all it caused was office fires, okay, just plain old office fires, and it was very close to the top level. So you can't have a fire near the top of the skyscraper cause all the structure below it to collapse into zero resistance. That's impossible, okay? You know, that would be like that would be like setting fire to the top of a tree, okay, and then having the tree just collapse at the rate of free fall speed. That's not going to happen because the tree has a lot of resistance from the trunk on up, okay? So you can't light the top of the fire. I mean, you can't light the top of the tree on fire and have the entire trunk come down at the rate of free fall. It just doesn't happen. When you cook, for example, okay, and you turn on the gas stove, if you have a gas stove or electric, when you turn on the flames of the stove and you're cooking, okay, does that fire at the top of your stove cause the entire range to just collapse at free fall? No, it doesn't. Because fire doesn't do that, okay? And, or what about the fire in a barbecue, in a charcoal grill? I mean, does the fire in the coal of the charcoal grill cause the whole structure to collapse? No, it doesn't, because it's contained, okay? And another thing is that the temperature of an office fire is about 1,000 degrees, okay, plus or minus 1,000 degrees. But in order to melt steel, okay, you need temperatures of about 2,750 degrees in order to melt steel. So those fires could not even melt steel. I mean, they were about 1/3 of the temperature required to melt steel. The difference between 1,000 degrees and 2,700 is like 1,700 degrees. Okay, so there's no way that could cause the steel to melt, okay, because 1,000 degrees is very far off from 2,750. So that's impossible. And now people who defend the official story, they say that, oh, the fire weakened the steel and caused it to buckle. But like I said, even if the fire did melt the steel or weaken the steel, it still doesn't explain how it could collapse at free fall. Okay, remember, each tower was weighed at 500,000 tons, and you can check this, it's on Wikipedia. It's official information. They were not hollow, okay, as the conspiracy debunkers say, okay. They were not hollow. That's a lie. If you look at the blueprints of the Twin Towers, they were not hollow. They weighed 500,000 tons. So they were not empty inside like the conspiracy debunkers claim. Like, for example, you know, if you go to debunking911.com, whoever wrote that site, I think it's Mark Roberts, if I'm not mistaken, but whoever wrote that, you know, he posted a bunch of lies. He claimed that the Twin Towers were hollow, but the official blueprints don't show that. And even Wikipedia says the towers weighed 500,000 tons, so they were not empty inside. They were not hollow tubes. So all of this means that there must have been a conspiracy, okay, an inside job. I mean, there's just no way around it, okay? And another thing is those planes on 9/11, okay? Did you know that all 4 planes on 9/11, I mean, none of them left any debris, okay? I mean, they all, including even the one that crashed in the ground in Pennsylvania, the Shanksville crash, that one left no debris, okay? You can see it in the initial photos of the crash. of the Shanksville crash. You can see it in the initial photos right after it crashed. It was just a hole in the ground, and there was nothing there, and even the mainstream media said that. Okay. Also, the one that crashed into the Pentagon, if you look at it, at the photos of that and the video of that was taken a few minutes after the crash, there's also no debris. You know, a Boeing 767, okay, it has a large engine and wheels and it has large parts, okay. It can't just vaporize, okay. I mean, especially not four of them, okay. Even the two that hit the Twin Towers, okay, they didn't leave any debris. I mean, some of the Twin Towers were made of steel, okay, and some of the plane pieces should have crashed and fell on the ground, okay, because those planes are made of aluminum and the Twin Towers are made of steel, and steel is a lot stronger than aluminum, so some pieces of that plane should have, broken off and fallen to the ground, but it didn't. So we don't even know what these planes were. I mean, they could be remote control, they could be special technology. Some even think they were holograms. I don't know. I mean, there are arguments for each theory, and I won't get into that right now because that's a really long discussion. But this is just very suspicious. We just don't know what happened and how it happened. There's so many mysteries and unanswered questions, and the government refuses to answer them, and the media has helped cover it up too, just like they did with the JFK assassination. They covered it up because they're controlled by the same elites, obviously. It's just basic common sense. So, I mean, there's a lot more 9/11 arguments I could give, but these are the core key ones that you can't refute, that says that something more happened than what we were told. Okay. And even people that have worked in NORAD, like the tactical operators of NORAD, the air defense system over America, even they said that NORAD must have been told to stand down, okay, because when a plane goes off course and loses the transponder, okay, it's only 10 or 15 minutes before NORAD scrambles jets to intercept that plane, okay? But on 9/11, 4 planes went off course and didn't answer their transponder, yet NORAD did not intercept any of them for like 90 minutes. And that's impossible, okay? Even people that work at NORAD will tell you that that's impossible. Some of the people that worked for NORAD before, okay, they've come out and testified to this, that this cannot happen with NORAD, okay? And their testimonies are on various websites, like, I forget the name, like Pilots for 9/11 Truth or something, and various other websites, okay? They say that the system that NORAD has is almost foolproof, okay? It intercepts planes that go off course 100% of the time. It has almost a 0 failure rate. And they've said that if a lot of bad luck happens or mistimings, maybe they'll fail to intercept 1 plane, okay, but not 4. That's impossible to fail 4 times in one day. That's just 100% impossible. So NORAD must have been called to stand down, and there's testimony that it was. This Japanese American guy claimed that Dick Cheney said something that sounded like a stand down order when he heard someone say, "Does the order still stand?" And then Dick Cheney said, "Of course the order still stands." And it sounds like he was ordering NORAD to stand down, which it must have been. So there are so many more arguments that I could give, but I'm not going to get into that because that would take so much time. But I encourage you to look into this yourself. One place to start is ae911truth.org, and that's the website of the architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. They've produced some really good documentaries about this, which you can see on YouTube. One is called 9/11 Blueprint for Truth, and another is called 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. And that one is really convincing because they have really top quality engineers and architects explaining why the official story cannot be true for some of the reasons I just cited. And these are professional structural engineers and architects and experts. These are not weird conspiracy buffs or losers, okay? These are people who, some of them own engineering firms, and some of them are structural engineers that have worked in the field for years or decades. And this documentary, it has about 50 experts, highly qualified, who claim the same thing, that the official story is impossible for the reasons I cited. So I would really recommend you look at that, because that's a very credible site, because it's based on what professionals say, professional engineers and architects. And so again, that's www.ae911truth.org. And they have several documentaries on YouTube you can see, and they're all very, very convincing and airtight and pretty much irrefutable. So there is a case for that, for 9/11 truth. Okay, so this is not some bogus conspiracy theory. This is very scientific, very factual. It's the laws of physics, the laws of common sense, basic logic. You can't refute this, okay? There's no way around it, and I'm sorry if this is disturbing, but this is the truth. This is the evidence. It's not refutable. Okay, so do some research, find out the truth, and this may be one of those gateway truths that once you accept that this was a conspiracy, it kind of opens the gate to other conspiracies that you didn't accept before. But because it is true that when you accept one conspiracy, a large conspiracy like this, that it's easier to accept other ones as being more plausible. Okay, and that might be disturbing, and it might ruin your view of the government, because a lot of people deep down, they want to trust their government like a caring parent. But too bad. I mean, truth is the truth, and it's better to know the truth than a lie, I think, because even as the Christian religion says, the truth shall set you free. Okay, and one good thing that comes out of this is that when you understand that the media and the government lie, you won't trust them so easily next time. But a lot of people still do, even when they lie. And it's a funny analogy, because think about it. If your friend, okay, lied to you about something important deliberately, you would not trust that friend in the future. I mean, he or she would lose credibility, and you would lose faith and trust in that person if you found out that they lied to you. So how is it then that a person's government can lie to them many times? And the U.S. government has lied about a lot of things, for sure, and the media too. Yet even though they lie many times, people still trust them and believe them, even though they wouldn't do that if a friend lied to them. And that's illogical. The only explanation is that people have an emotional need to trust their government. They have a need to feel that their government is good and cares about them and is loving and protecting like a parent. So they have an emotional need to trust their government, because they don't want, because otherwise it's too disturbing for them. So that's the only logical explanation why people would continue to trust a government that's lied to them so many times. Some people, not all, of course. There's a lot of people that in America that believe in conspiracies, okay, and there's a big subculture of conspiracy people, like the one that Alex Jones heads. People that don't trust government. So, yeah, that's the only explanation. So, anyways, go out and research it, and you'll see more and more. If you research 9/11 truth, you'll realize more and more that what I said is true, and and I don't know, what can I say? Knowledge is power. So I think the truth may hurt, but eventually it'll help you to be more skeptical and to help you to be more wise. When you accept that, this world is corrupt, especially America, and that's just the way it is. So maybe it'll help you make better choices in life. I don't know. All right, well, thanks for watching. Talk to you next time. By the way, I forgot to mention something earlier about 9/11. Um, the smoking gun is Building 7, which is the third tower that fell at free fall speed, like I mentioned earlier. It actually fell at about 5.5 seconds. And you can see this on YouTube. There's a ton of clips of it. I mean, and it's featured in many 9/11 documentaries too. This was a 47-story building made of steel, made of the finest materials. And it mostly housed government offices. So it was basically a government building made of the finest steel and materials. Yet it collapsed at the rate of free fall at about 5.5 seconds. Some might say 6 seconds, but either way, that's almost at the rate of free fall, which means that there was zero resistance. And like I mentioned earlier, a building, especially a skyscraper, cannot have zero resistance. Otherwise, it would fall. If buildings were like that, the roof above my head would collapse on me right now. But it doesn't, because buildings have resistance holding it up, and a lot of resistance too, strong resistance. So Building 7 was the smoking gun because what was special about it was that it was not hit by a plane. Okay, it was not hit by any plane. Okay, the two planes hit the Twin Towers. Okay, and one crashed in Shanksville and one crashed into the Pentagon. Allegedly, of course, that's the official story, even though there's not much evidence for it. But anyways, no plane hit Building 7, okay? There's no video of any plane hitting Building 7. It was not even alleged to, okay? And yet it still collapsed at free fall speed from fire. And that is a smoking gun, because that is impossible, especially since no plane hit it. Okay, so the official story is that fire destroyed Building 7. But, like I mentioned earlier, fire cannot collapse a building at the rate of free fall, especially in just a few hours. Okay, if you look at other skyscrapers around the world, this has never happened before in history, that a skyscraper has collapsed just from fire alone. In fact, after 9/11, a few years later, there was a building in China, a big skyscraper. I don't remember whether it was in Beijing or Shanghai, but this skyscraper was on fire for like 20 hours, and it still did not collapse, okay? And there was also a skyscraper in Madrid, Spain, that was also on fire for a long time, and it also did not collapse too. It was put out after a while. I don't know when the Madrid fire was. I think it was a few years after 9/11, or maybe a few years before. I don't recall exactly, but you can look at this up. I mean, other skyscrapers and tall buildings that are on fire never collapse like that at the rate of free fall. And Richard Gage of the Architects and Engineers of 9/11 Truth, who's a professional architect, he made a good point in that he said that if a skyscraper were to deteriorate from fire, okay, I mean, if a skyscraper, okay, was on fire for a really long time and it started to deteriorate and collapse, okay, it would not collapse straight down, okay, it would, into its own footprint, into the path of greatest resistance, okay. More often than not, it would topple over, okay. The pieces would start to come down like this. I mean, it would start to fall off sideways, okay, because that's the path of, that's the path of least resistance, okay. So when things fall, okay, they go to the path of least resistance, not the path of greatest resistance, okay. So that's a key point, okay. I'm just saying that theoretically, if a building were on fire for many days, for example, and it was starting to collapse, especially a steel skyscraper, um, it would start to collapse like this, sideways, into the path of least resistance, not the path of greatest resistance, which is straight down into the structure itself, which has a lot of weight. And like I mentioned earlier, the Twin Towers each weighed about 500,000 tons. And that's a lot of weight. You can look this up on Wikipedia. It's documented. It's official. So, yeah, this was the smoking gun, and it's called the smoking gun in the 9/11 Truth Movement, the collapse of Building 7, and this is really important because I forgot to mention that this earlier when I was doing this video about 9/11 Truth. So yeah, look it up and research it, and you'll see that this is irrefutable. The skeptics cannot explain that. No skeptic or debunker of conspiracies can explain the collapse of Building 7 that fast, because there's no way fire could do that. Like I said, you have to destroy the infrastructure below, the under infrastructure. Either the basement or the first floor has to be destroyed. The columns have to be cut and detonated first to collapse the rest. Okay, so yeah, I posted. I'm going to post some links for you to click on below to the website I recommended, the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, and also some names of documentaries you should see. Besides the 2 documentaries produced by AE 9/11 Truth, there's also one that I really like personally. It was made in Italy, and it has a very nice ebb and flow, and it's very intimate and well done. It makes you, it's a little bit artistic in that it makes you feel the points and the testimonies and the arguments. So not only is it very credible and scientific and very logically based, but it makes you feel the emotions of the people being interviewed, the testimonies. Okay, and that film is called Zero, an investigation into 9/11. It's called Zero, an investigation into 9/11, and that's been on YouTube for a long time. So you can just search that on YouTube, and you'll find it. There's multiple copies of it. It's about 2 hours, and it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, and I think it's probably the best 9/11 documentary because it's just powerful. It makes you feel every point. Okay. And it was made in Italy by a good director. It was made back in 2008, I think. In fact, I think you can find it just by typing Zero, Zero, and then 9/11, 9/11. You could probably find it that way too. But it's a really good film. I strongly recommend that you see that if you haven't. In addition to the 2 documentaries by AE 9/11 Truth, which are 9/11 Blueprint for Truth and 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak Out. That's the second documentary featuring all those professional engineers and architects, about 50 of them, I think. So yeah, those are very convincing and irrefutable and very rock solid. No one can really deny it, okay, unless they have an agenda to debunk anything that doesn't fit the official story, okay, unless they're a propagandist, Okay, so check those out, and especially check out the collapse of Building 7. Like I said, this is the smoking gun, and it's irrefutable. It makes the conspiracy or the partial inside job, it makes it an absolute certainty, okay? There's no way around it, okay? This makes the conspiracy an absolute certainty. And it means that it must have at least partially been an inside job, even if the terrorists and the hijackers on the plane did exist, okay? It was at least the very least partially inside job, and there's no escape from that. Okay, absolutely no escape. You cannot deny this logically unless you have an emotional bias or a knee-jerk reaction to deny this, and because people can't accept it. Because it's a disturbing truth, so a lot of people can't accept it, even though logically they know it's true and it must be. Okay, but the fact is the fact. It's irrefutable. Just look at the evidence I told you. There's a lot of evidence for 9/11 truth of it being an inside job, but I'm just giving you the strongest arguments for now. Okay, because I don't have time to go into all the arguments. There's a lot of them, so I'm just giving you the strongest core arguments for you to research later. And I've also written a very big article about 3 American conspiracies, okay? And one of the 3 is 9/11 truth. The other 2, I'll leave it as a surprise to you, to get you to click on my link, because I'm going to put the link to that paper that I wrote in the description box below. It's called my Conspiracy Trilogy Report, okay? And because it covers 3 big American conspiracies, and it's not on happierabroad.com. It's on another website that I own too, a smaller website, and it's also really good because I list a lot of evidence and proofs for each of the 3 conspiracies, and I try my best to summarize these proofs and get right to the point, so I don't beat around the bush like some people do. Some people just, to get to one main point, they beat around the bush for 30 minutes before getting to the main point. And I don't like to do that because I don't like to waste your time, and I don't like anyone wasting my time. I like to just get to the point, to the main point right away. And, that's my style, okay? So with me, there's no bull, there's no beating around the bush, okay? There's no empty filler. Okay, I get right to the point. So if you read my Conspiracy Trilogy Report that I'm going to link below, okay, you'll see a lot of proofs for 9/11 truth, about 30 or so, maybe a little more, okay? And in each of the proofs and arguments, I get right to the main point. I give links for more research. And, these are very rock-solid arguments that, they're strong arguments, they're logical arguments that 9/11 was an inside job. So check out my Conspiracy Trilogy Report, in addition to the other links and the documentaries I suggested. And in my Conspiracy Report, you'll see all the rest of the arguments for 9/11 truth that, I don't have time to get into right now because there's so many of them. So I just hope that this has sparked your interest if you're new to this field, and that you'll see the documentaries I recommended, see the links, and also see my Conspiracy Trilogy Report below, because it's very convincing and compelling. It's a very rock solid argument, and I encourage you to share this with other people too, who don't believe. Who still believe the official story and don't believe that a conspiracy was possible. Okay. There are still a lot of people out there that like that. They're just in denial. They cannot accept such a disturbing truth. So I encourage you to share them too. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I just had to add this in because I forgot to earlier. So sorry, I had to come back again to make an addendum after I already said goodbye on this video. But I thought this was an important point to make. Okay, take care, have a great day. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.